The rain hadn't stopped all day. It tapped against the windows like a quiet drumbeat, filling the small living room with a soft, constant rhythm. Emily sat on the old couch with her feet up on a pillow, her huge belly rising under a faded t-shirt. She was 9 months pregnant and exhausted. A worn notebook rested on her belly as she slowly wrote down baby names. The house smelled like damp leaves from the backyard. The old furnace made loud clicking sounds, but it never really warmed the place. She told herself to just stay quiet, just make it through the last few days. Maybe if she didn't say anything, nothing would explode. But deep down she knew how easily things could turn. Where are you watching from today? Kindly hit like, comment and subscribe to this channel for more. The front door slammed open so hard the windows rattled. Her father's heavy boots thudded across the floor, leaving muddy prints on the rug. His face was tight, his eyes angry. Emily's heart sank. He had seen that look before. "Emily," he barked, holding up his checkbook. "There's $100 missing. Do you know anything about it?" She looked up slowly, her pencil still in her hand. "No, Dad. I didn't touch your money," she said, trying to stay calm. Her heart was racing though. Before he could answer, his wife Carol walked in from the hallway, a smirk already forming on her face. "Isn't it funny?" Carol said, folding her arms as she leaned against the doorway. "Money goes missing the same week she says she needs baby clothes. What a surprise." Emily's stomach turned. "That's not true. I wouldn't, please," Carol cut her off, her voice sharp. "You're 9 months pregnant, not married, and now you're a thief too? What a resume." Emily tried to stand, using the table for support, but the weight of her belly made it slow. "Dad, you know I wouldn't steal from you. Ever." Her voice shook with fear, but her father didn't say a word. He just stared, caught between his daughter's pain and his wife's poisonous words. Carol's voice dropped lower, but it still filled the room. "She probably needed it for something she doesn't want you to know about. Maybe the father of that child." Emily covered her belly protectively. "That's enough," she said softly, but no one stopped Carol. Her father moved toward the phone on the wall. "If you didn't take it, the police can figure that out." Emily's eyes went wide. "No. Please think of the baby," she said, moving slowly toward him. "You can't do this." Carol raised an eyebrow and said, "Maybe she should learn about consequences now before the baby's born." Tears slipped down Emily's face, hot against her skin. "I'm your daughter," she cried. "You raised me. Doesn't that mean anything?" He didn't say a word. His hand gripped the phone, dialing slowly. Through the rain-streaked window, Emily could see neighbors watching from behind curtains. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. Then the lights appeared, red and blue flashing against the walls. When the officers stepped inside, their faces were stiff with duty. Emily couldn't even meet their eyes. The cuffs clicked cold around her wrists. She looked at her father one last time, but he had already turned his back. The younger police officer, a man with wet hair stuck to his forehead, looked uncomfortable as he helped Emily outside. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he whispered. "Your father insisted." Emily didn't respond. She just sat in the back of the cruiser, her hands cuffed, her back pressed against the cold seat. Every bump on the road made her wince, her belly tightening. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly, trying not to cry. But the storm outside made everything feel worse, louder, heavier. It was like the whole world had turned against her. When they reached the station, the bright lights burned her eyes. The air smelled like wet wool and cleaning chemicals. One officer walked beside her more slowly, as if trying to protect her from the curious stares. But Emily still saw them. The looks. The whispers. Through the glass door she spotted Carol outside, sipping from a thermos and laughing like nothing had happened. She even said something to Emily's father that made him smirk. Emily's chest ached. The younger officer leaned down and whispered again. "You shouldn't be here. But your dad signed the report. We had no choice." Emily's throat tightened. "He's all I had left," she whispered. The officer looked away, but his eyes were full of sadness. They led her to a holding cell. The loud clang of the door locking behind her echoed in her chest. She sat slowly on the metal bench, one hand on her back, the other on her belly. "We'll be okay," she whispered to the baby. "I promise." She looked up at the tiny window. Rain still fell outside. And there, just a blur, but she knew it was Carol, standing relaxed, sipping her drink, like she had won. Emily closed her eyes, but Carol's voice echoed in her mind. Unwed. Knocked up. The humiliation burned. Carol had always wanted her out of the house, but Emily never thought her father would help make that happen. A soft knock on the bars made her jump. It was the young officer again. He slid a paper cup of water through the slot. You can ask for a call if you want, he said kindly. Emily's eyes lit up. Please, I need to call my sister. But then heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Her father's voice followed. She doesn't get a call, her father said coldly from the hallway. She'll just try to lie more. The officer hesitated but nodded. Emily's hands trembled around the cup. Please, she said through the bars. Just one call. Her father didn't even glance her way. Carol stepped closer behind him, her voice clear and full of fake sweetness. She won't last long without us, she said with a laugh. Emily pressed both hands to her belly, whispering to her baby, Hold on for me. Please. The fear was deep in her chest, but she refused to cry in front of them. Emily closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the cold wall. She breathed slowly, trying not to panic. Outside, the storm was still raging. The thunder echoed like drums. The metal bars felt like they were closing in. They think I'm weak, she whispered to the baby. But they're wrong. She couldn't sleep, not with her heart racing and the cold bench pressing into her back. But eventually her body gave in. When she woke, it was still dark. Her back ached. Her belly shifted, the baby moving gently, reminding her she wasn't alone. The sound of boots down the hall snapped her awake fully. Then a familiar voice. Her father stood near the cell, hands in his coat pockets. He didn't meet her eyes. Emily sat up, staring at him through the bars. Dad, she said softly. I didn't take it. You know I didn't. He didn't answer. Please, she begged. You raised me. Doesn't that mean anything to you? He finally looked at her, his face hard. You should have just admitted it, he said. Emily's mouth dropped open. I didn't do anything, she whispered, but he turned and walked away. His footsteps faded, but another sound followed, high heels clicking on the concrete. Carol appeared like she owned the place, calm and proud. She leaned against the bars, smiling faintly. Better get used to this, she said. No man wants a woman who can't even be trusted in her father's house. Emily stared at her, saying nothing. Carol stayed just long enough to enjoy the silence, then walked away, humming to herself. The moment she was gone, Emily turned to the guard. Please, she whispered. Just one call. I need to speak to my sister. The guard looked uncomfortable. He glanced at the paper on his desk and sighed. Your dad left a note. No outside calls unless he approves. The words hit her like a punch. She stared at the wall, too stunned to speak. Her sister, her only real support, was unreachable. Emily hugged her belly tight, whispering, We'll get through this. Somehow. The hours crawled. The clock ticked louder with every second. Her body ached, but her heart ached more. She lay on the bench, unable to sleep, replaying everything. Her dad's anger. Carol's smile. The missing money. None of it made sense. But then something clicked in her mind. What if it was never about the money? Carol had always wanted her out. And she'd been near the wallet that day. Could this all have been a setup? The idea made her stomach turn. She planned this, Emily whispered in the dark. She wanted me gone. Her hands went to her belly again. But we're still here. And we're going to find the truth. Just then, a knock on the bars pulled her from her thoughts. A guard opened the cell. You've got a visitor, he said. Emily's heart jumped. She followed him down the hall, her ankles stiff, her arms sore. When she reached the visitor room, she braced herself, expecting to see Carol. But it wasn't her. Sitting on the other side of the glass was her cousin Jake, his brown eyes soft with worry. Jake. Emily whispered, picking up the phone. Hey Em, he said gently. I couldn't let you sit in here without knowing the truth. He glanced around, then slid something under the glass, a folded note. Emily opened it with shaking fingers. It was her sister's handwriting. I believe you. Don't give up. Tears welled in Emily's eyes as she pressed the note to her chest. Thank you, she whispered. Jake leaned close to the glass. People saw Carol hanging around your dad's wallet the day the money disappeared, he said. She's been bragging that you'll never come back. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Why would she do this to me? Jake's face stayed steady. Because she knows your dad always listens to her. And she wants you out. Emily swallowed hard, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly. She won't win, she whispered. She can't. Jake glanced over his shoulder. I can't stay long, he said quickly. If she finds out I came. He didn't finish. Carol appeared in the hallway, her heels clicking, her sharp eyes landing right on Emily. Act normal, Jake mouthed. Emily gave him a tight smile. Thanks for checking in, Jake, she said, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. That meant a lot. Carol stepped into the room slowly, her arms crossed. Funny seeing you here, she said coldly. Emily held the phone tighter. He just came to say hi. Carol didn't buy it. She narrowed her eyes at Jake, then turned her focus back to Emily. Stay strong, she said, mocking his words. You'll need it. She walked out without another word, but Emily could tell. Carol was suspicious now. That night, back in the cell, Emily lay on the bench with her hands on her belly. The note from her sister was hidden safely under the thin mattress. They think I'm broken, she whispered to her unborn child. But we're still standing. The guard passed by. Get ready, he said. You're going to court tomorrow. Emily sat up slowly. Her back ached and her stomach twisted with nerves. Court, her future and her baby's, was hanging by a thread. The next morning the guard returned. Time to go, he said. He shackled her wrists and ankles. Each cuff dug into her skin. Emily winced as she walked down the cold hallway. At the courthouse, whispers followed her like shadows. Neighbors, church members, even old friends stared. She gave birth in jail, someone whispered. Her own dad called the cops on her. Emily kept her head high. She wasn't here to cry. She was here to fight. Inside the courtroom, the judge entered with a stern look. Bring her forward, he said. Emily's knees wobbled as she stepped toward the defense table. Her shackles clinked with every step. Then her father stood to speak. He looked polished in a dark suit, standing tall and proud. But his voice was cold. She took the money, he told the court. We both saw her near my wallet. She's been irresponsible before. This time it's too far. Emily flinched at each word. Dad, she whispered. But he didn't glance her way. She was invisible to him now. Carol sat behind him, her hands folded neatly, her face calm. When the judge turned to her, she rose like a queen. We were only trying to protect the baby, she said, her voice smooth. Emily has been unstable lately. Stressed. Making bad choices. We were worried. Her eyes met Emily's and held a flicker of triumph. Emily's stomach twisted. They weren't just accusing her. They were trying to take her child. When Carol sat back down, she leaned toward Emily and whispered, Hope you don't go into labor in there. It's a cold floor. Emily clenched her jaw. Her fists trembled. But she said nothing. Joel, her cousin, stood up next. Calm and steady, he handed a folder to the bailiff. Your Honor, he said. We have new evidence. Bank transfers and a voicemail recording. The judge adjusted his glasses, flipping through the documents. Then he nodded for the recording to be played. Carol's voice filled the room, clear and cruel. If she's out of the way, we can finally raise the child right. That money was worth it. The courtroom gasped. Murmurs rose like waves. Emily stared straight ahead, unmoving. The judge's eyes narrowed. He turned to Emily's father. Did you know about this? He asked. Her father's lips parted. He froze. Carol's nails dug into his sleeve, but he said nothing. For the first time, Emily saw fear in his eyes. Uncertainty. Slowly she stood, holding a small photo of her newborn daughter in her hand. Her voice trembled but didn't break. You sent me to jail for something I didn't do. You tried to take my baby. But truth doesn't stay buried. From the back someone whispered, She's right. Another voice echoed, This isn't justice. The judge struck his gavel sharply. Enough, he said. We will reconvene tomorrow for a final ruling. The room buzzed with energy. Emily returned to her seat, her heart pounding. Joel passed by her, leaned close and whispered, Hold strong. Tomorrow is yours. That night, back in her hospital room, Emily sat beside Anna's bassinet. Her baby stirred gently in her sleep, her tiny fingers twitching. Emily reached down and brushed her cheek. You'll never have to fight the way I did, she whispered. A knock broke the silence. She turned and froze. It was her father. He stepped inside slowly, his shoulders slumped, eyes heavy with guilt. For a long moment he didn't speak. He just looked at the baby, his lips tight. "I thought I was doing the right thing," he said finally. Emily didn't flinch. She sat tall and still. "No," she replied quietly. "You listened to her. You believed a lie. And you left me alone." Her father's eyes shimmered with tears, but none fell. He opened his mouth to speak again but found nothing. The silence was thick. Emily gently placed her hand between him and Anna. "Not today," she said. Her father's shoulders sagged. He nodded once, slowly. Then he turned and walked out without a word. For the first time he had no excuse, no defense, just silence. Joel stepped in moments later, a folder in his hand. "It's over," he said softly. Emily blinked. "Over." He nodded. "The judge dismissed all charges. You have full custody. And Carol, she's under investigation for fraud." Emily's chest tightened, not with fear, but with release. "We're free," she whispered, looking down at her daughter. "We're finally free." Her father had barely closed the door behind him, but the weight he carried seemed to linger in the room. Joel sat beside her, his hand firm on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "You didn't let them win." Emily nodded, still stunned. "I almost didn't make it," she admitted. "But you did," Joel said. "You fought back. For her and for yourself." Emily looked down at Anna, her small chest rising and falling in peaceful sleep. On her head sat the tiny hat Emily had knitted in jail. Each stitch had been a prayer. Now it was a crown. Tears slipped from her eyes, this time not from pain but from something deeper. She leaned down and kissed Anna's forehead. "We'll be okay," she whispered. "Because silence can hurt, but it can also set you free." Joel leaned back in the chair, letting her have the moment. Outside, the world was still full of whispers and stares. But inside this room there was peace. Emily knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges ahead. But for now, she had her daughter, her truth, and her strength. The next morning, sunlight filled the hospital room. Emily sat by the window, holding Anna in her arms. Nurses came and went, smiling gently, offering kind words. One of them paused beside her. "You're stronger than most," she said softly. Emily gave a small smile. "I didn't feel strong," she replied. "But you stood when others tried to crush you." The nurse tucked a blanket around the baby. "That's what real strength looks like." Emily looked down at Anna, then back out the window. The storm had passed. A new chapter had begun. Emily was released from the hospital 3 days later. She walked out carrying Anna wrapped in a soft yellow blanket, her cousin Joel by her side. A social worker had helped arrange a small temporary apartment. It wasn't much, but it was safe and hers. As the cab pulled away from the hospital curb, Emily looked back one last time. That place had taken her to her lowest moment, but it had also given her Anna. She held the baby close and whispered, "We're not going back. Not ever." At the new apartment, the lights flickered when she switched them on, and the heater groaned like it hadn't been used in years. But Emily smiled anyway. She laid Anna gently in a borrowed crib, then unpacked the folded note from her sister and the tiny hat from the hospital. They were symbols now. Proof of everything she had survived. That night, as Anna slept soundly, Emily picked up her notebook again, the same one she'd used for baby names weeks before. She flipped to a clean page and wrote a single word at the top: beginnings. A week passed. Then, one morning while feeding Anna, Emily got a call from the court office. "Carol has been formally charged," the clerk said. "And your father has withdrawn all claims to custody." Emily sat still for a long moment after hanging up. She expected to feel victorious. But instead she felt something softer, something like peace. They were out of her life now, and maybe that was the real win. She picked Anna up and kissed her forehead. "You're mine," she whispered. "And no one can take that from us." Later that week, Joel stopped by with groceries. He helped clean up the tiny kitchen and set up a space for Anna's changing table. "You've got this," he said, stepping back to admire their work. "One day she'll know everything you went through. And she'll be proud of you." Emily smiled. "I don't need them anymore," she said softly. "I don't need their love. I've got enough for both of us now." Joel hugged her gently. That's exactly why they lost. They never understood what real love looked like. One morning, Emily received a letter in the mail. No return address, but she recognized the handwriting. It was from her father. The note was short. "I'm sorry. I was weak. I hope one day you can forgive me." Emily read it twice. She folded it neatly and slid it into the back of her notebook, behind the baby names and behind the court papers. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. Some things didn't need a reply. Not now. Maybe not ever. Days turned into weeks. Emily took small jobs online, working late at night while Anna slept. Her life became a rhythm of soft lullabies, warm bottles, and whispered prayers. Her sister visited often, helping when she could. "You don't owe anyone anything," her sister told her one afternoon. "You already proved them all wrong." Emily nodded. "I know. I just want her to grow up safe, and never doubt her worth." One night Anna had trouble sleeping. Emily rocked her gently in the moonlit living room. Outside, the city lights blinked like distant stars. She hummed softly, stroking her daughter's hair. "One day I'll tell you everything," she whispered. "About the rain, the silence, the cell, the lies, and how you saved me without ever saying a word." Anna's eyes finally drifted shut. Emily held her for a long time, as if wrapping both of them in a promise. Months later, Emily stood outside a small daycare center she had been accepted to work at, an opportunity made possible through a local women's support group. The director smiled at her resume. "You've been through a lot," the woman said kindly. "Mothers like you, they make the best caregivers." Emily smiled back, her eyes warm. "I think I finally understand what strength means." She looked through the window where Anna played with a soft toy, giggling. "It means getting up again. Even when no one's clapping for you." Emily never went back to her father's house. She never saw Carol again. But word eventually spread through their small town. And this time the whispers were different. The girl they once mocked had become a mother, a provider, a survivor. At the grocery store, people no longer stared with pity. They nodded with quiet respect. Emily held her head high, her daughter on her hip, and walked through the aisles like someone who had finally come home to herself. On Anna's first birthday, Emily lit a single candle and held her close. Her sister and Joel joined them in the small living room. There was cake, laughter, and a photo of the three of them beside a hand-drawn sign that read, "We made it." Emily looked at Anna's smiling face and whispered, "You're the reason I never gave up." Then, in the soft glow of the candlelight, Emily finally allowed herself to exhale. Not in grief. Not in fear. But in peace. The storm was over. And in its place was love, quiet, strong, and finally, enough. Moral lesson. Sometimes the people meant to protect you become the ones you must survive. But true strength is not about fighting loudly. It's about holding on, speaking truth, and choosing love, even when the world turns its back. Remember to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more of this.